Today is Tuesday, July the 14th. Happy Bastille Day. Unlike yesterday, what we saw was just a continuing move upwards, one little dip, but continuing move upwards in the Dow. The Nasdaq did a sharp reversal, as did the S&P 500. So all of those look good. The volume, what does the volume tell us? First of all, the oscillator itself ticked a little bit higher, still below zero, and still you can imagine that we've got this imaginary support line down here that we talked about, and then we would have this imaginary resistance line here, and a possibility that if it rises just a little bit, McClellan oscillator, then we really will be in this wedge formed by the pressure from the bears and the pressure from the bulls. So let's watch that tomorrow. That would require a very narrow uptick from the McClellan oscillator tomorrow. The volume was a little bit less than yesterday, which isn't all that good. The buying volume and the selling volume were just reversed from the day before. Let's see if the charts tell us anything, because they have been talking to us in Fibonacci's. Now we had the S&P break above this this trend line. It's a pretty solid trend line. Break above it for the first time and hold it. So let's see if it can continue to hold it. The Dow Jones Industrial Average broke into the gap, so it broke out of this channel in between the two gaps. Now it's going to move up, and if it continues to move up, it's going to be stopped at 27,000. That's a nice round number, where you would expect to see some people offloading their Dow stocks at a nice round number like 27,000. The S&P hit a nice round number of 3,200 right there today. 30, well, almost, yeah, you can't see it behind there, but it's just a little bit higher, 3,200, and then pulled back. The Nasdaq finished the day lower than the previous day, and it's that 150% of the long-term move, this long move here that has an extension up to 150% right here, that proved to be the resistance. The Nasdaq can still move up to 150% of the COVID retreat, and then we'd see some resistance. Apple closed at a new high. Did it? No. It opened, let's see, it opened at a new high yesterday, but it didn't close. So today it closed at a new high, and Apple finished at 390 exactly. Just a tremendous stock, although the volume was a little bit low. Caterpillar, strangely enough, had the biggest day of all, and here is your finished Gartley. So we've got two Gartley patterns. Let's get rid of this one for a second, this one right here. And remember this first Gartley pattern, it started back in January of this year and came down to this point, up here to a 61.8 for 3 days, came down into this acceptable region for a retrace, and then hit the 78.6. So now let's bring back that other one, and you can see that we have this one started in June, pulled back to A, up to 61.8, and then immediately pulled back into this acceptable range, almost down to the 88.6, and then today finished above the 78.6. So you can expect on a big day like Caterpillar today that, and look at the volume, you would expect a little bit of a pullback tomorrow, but that is certainly bullish. Freeport, that I sold out of yesterday, of course, proved me wrong and moved higher. So now it's moving up to this 100% line. And did we actually touch it? Not quite, but that means that we would have equaled this previous high of 1364, which was made at the beginning of the year, January the 11th. So Freeport is looking a little stretched. Home Depot broke out of this wedge and now has finished, we just draw a line up here, at its previous high. So one might say that it's double topped, and is it a little stretched? Facebook, not quite back to the 127.2, so still has some room to run. Amazon, amazing, $3,000. This is the weekly chart, and you can see that it's down on the week, but it's at the 161.8, hovering around there. We're going to look next at JP Morgan that had earnings. So you read that their earnings were good, their earnings were bad, but they were able to put aside $10 million to protect themselves from future mortgage and credit defaults and auto loan defaults that they sense might be coming. So JP Morgan was strong. Did that translate into all the other banks? Well, JP was up 1.3%. Goldman Sachs, who probably report tomorrow because they're usually the day after JP Morgan, was up 3%. Citigroup, who reported today, were down 3%. US Bank down 1%, and Bank of America up 1%. So the banks were a bit of and Wells Fargo's had its first loss since 2008 and decreased their dividend even further. So let's just look at a couple more. Let's look at Whirlpool at 140. Still has a lot of room to run. I don't particularly like shark patterns, which this is, but look at this. This is a 61.8% move below the A line, A to B, and then continued to pull back to 61.8 from that line. So that's an interesting spot to take a bounce. And it's recovered back to its COVID high of 78.6. If it completes this shark pattern, it's going to 202, and it's quite capable of it. It's a great stock. It's certainly not run its course or stretched like we saw so many other stocks. AT&T, 30, and Netflix. I really think that Netflix is just, well, I mean, it's a beast, right? But it's also stretched. I mean, having to pay $580 for this stock, I don't know. We see a lot of stocks that are getting very expensive. We're coming up to an election. You know, I still honestly believe with the McClellan oscillator below the zero line, we're neither oversold nor overbought. I still see the Dow Jones as being our indicator here. We've broken out of this channeling consolidation pattern, but I wouldn't be surprised to see us come back. I'm not a bull, as you know, very comfortable with my short calls that are going to expire in August, September, and November. All of them are in the money now, so it's a matter of just seeing premium depreciate on those short calls, and I will probably be in the best position that I've been in years. Without those short calls, I probably wouldn't be sleeping at night because I would have been sleeping on too many huge profits. So there's good news and bad news. I probably would have followed my own advice and sold out to my detriment. But because I'm covered by all the short calls, I sleep well at night. And a pullback would be wonderful. A move higher, I can certainly welcome as well.